حلقاتنا في خام بالعادة تكون بالعربي، لكن المرة هذه حصلت لي فرصة أقابل فنان مختلف تماماً وللأسف ما يتكلم عربي. سوينا الحلقة بالإنجليزي وراح نترجمها لكم، نتمنى لكم مشاهدة ممتعة. نيل هاربيسون فنان أسباني من أصول إيرلندية، اشتهر بكونه أول شخص بالعالم يقوم بزراعة قرن استشعار في جمجمته. في سن 11 اكتشف نيل أنه يعاني من مرض يسمى بالأكروماتية اللالونية، حيث يكون المصاب بها فاقد لقدرة رؤية الألوان وفهمها. وفي عام 2004 أصبح نيل أول سايبورغ أو مزيج بين الإنسان والآلة معترف فيه قانونياً. من خلال مجس الاستشعار اللي قام بزراعته يستطيع نيل سماع الألوان، حيث يقوم المجس بقراءة الألوان وتحويلها إلى ذبذبات صوتية تهتز في جمجمته بشكل مستمر. وخلال ال10 سنوات السابقة قام نيل بتطوير مجس الاستشعار حتى أصبح متوافق مع خاصية الواي فاي، وأصبح نيل يستخدمها لاستلام وسماع أصوات ألوان الفضاء من خلال محطة الفضاء الدولية. قابلت نيل لأول مرة بعد محاضرة ألقاها في بينالي الدرعية، واللي قفل أبوابه يوم 11 مارس بالمناسبة، الحقوا عليه قبل ما ينتهي. بعد المحاضرة قام نيل باستعراض موسيقى يستخدم فيها أصوات من ألوان لأجسام مختلفة. وبعد لقائنا حصل لي أغرب شرف بعد ما سجل نيل أصوات وجهي ليصنع منها أغنيتي الخاصة. ما أنصح أحد يسمع وجهي. في جلستنا اليوم راح نتكلم عن خلفية نيل، الأكروماتية اللالونية، وقرار زراعة مجس في جمجمته، وكيف تغيرت حياته بشكل تام بعد هذا القرار.
Yeah, well, as a child, I noticed that I found it difficult to differentiate colors. So when we went to the ophthalmologist, and he said I was colorblind, that I was confusing red and green. But then we noticed that I was confusing more colors than red and green. So then the doctor just said I was very colorblind. And then in the end...
That's the technical term for it, very colorblind.
It's just that it's very colorblind. And then in the end... well, it was a Ishihara test. There's a test, they're called Ishihara tests, and they help you really identify which type of color blindness you have. I did the test, and then we found out that I was not seeing any color. It wasn't just a few. But the thing is that when I was a child, if they asked me what's the color of the sky, I would just say blue. What's the color of the grass? I would say green, because I learned that the grass is green, that the sky is blue, but I didn't know I was not seeing it, and I still don't know what I'm not seeing, because it's difficult to understand what I'm missing.
I see.
It's just that I don't see the difference between a black and white picture and a color picture. I find it hard to understand what the difference is. And then, so it took a while to discover this. I was 11 when I knew that I wasn't seeing color. So then...
Do you remember that moment? Do you remember that moment where you're like, oh, okay, I can't see color?
Yes, because it was at a museum in London. So it wasn't the doctor that discovered it. It was us in the museum. I went with my family, and there was the Ishihara tests, and then after that we went again to the doctor, and then the doctor confirmed that I wasn't detecting or perceiving any colors.
Is it that test with the pictures and numbers inside them with varying colors?
Yes.
So to you, it was just a bunch of...
I could see one. Okay. One of them I could see. But apparently if you saw that one, that meant that you were only seeing grayscale. So I remember seeing one, but the rest, I couldn't see any numbers. And this was the strange, because not seeing a number is different than not seeing a color. Yeah. I found it...
Information
shocking,
is
and
missing.
I still find it very shocking.
The information that is the color was just, symbolized in a number that is missing. So it's more apparent that you can't see it.
It's impressive that it was a shock for me. But we never took it seriously, because I don't know. We just said something. It also maybe helped us understand why I was confusing so many colors. So it was... Life just went on. I mean, and then I just tried to ignore color.
So it never interfered with your life, right?
Not really, no. I just ignored color. I avoided color in conversation. I avoided situations of talking about color. But then I realized that I couldn't really ignore color. You can't really ignore it. It's constantly mentioned in all subjects. Even in music, they talk about the color of music. So then I changed, and I started to focus on learning more about color. And then I was really interested in theories. And one of them, by Isaac Newton, is the one that I really...
the waves representation of colors.
Yeah, Isaac Newton thought there was a relationship between colors and sound, because he said that they both vibrated So he thought that maybe each color of the rainbow related to a musical note. But he had no technology to prove this. And now we can prove that he was right, that both color and sound vibrate. They have frequencies. So we can relate color and sound in a physical way.
Both lights and colors, I'm sorry, both lights and sounds are just waves.
Or vibrations. Yes.
Which vibrate, obviously. And then they have their own frequency and wavelength, and then...
Frequencies, yeah, they all...
vibrate.
Yeah, vibrate, yeah.
And then, so you studied that, and you mentioned that you had a degree in music as well, right?
Yes, I was studying music composition, and that's where I focused on frequencies of sound. And then I was asked to use technology in my music degree, and I really didn't like music. I didn't like technology, so it was a difficult assessment to use technology in music because I'm more of a classical pianist. But then I didn't want to create electronic music because other students were already doing this, so I tried to find other ways of using technology in a different way, and then instead of using technology,
I became technology.
I became the technology. So then, the musical instrument, which is this, became part of my body.
Okay, so you installed this in 2004, right? You installed the antenna. Can you break down what the antenna does, how it was installed, the technology behind it?
Yeah, in 2003, I started the antenna project, and in 2004, March 22nd, and had it, I wore it permanently attached at the beginning. So it was with a pressure that it was allowed me to hear the color
through external
pressure.
vibrations?
Yes.
Okay.
And this was for a while, and then it wasn't very comfortable because it was creating too much pressure. So then I tried to have it permanently implanted, and it was challenging to find a doctor willing to do the surgery. And then once I found a doctor willing to do the surgery, then the antenna was implanted, so it would be much more practical. More of a practical reason, and then it had all this social reaction, which is maybe sometimes exaggerated. It's because we are using technology constantly. So I think merging biologically with technology is I don't know, it's not so, it's just more comfortable in a way.
And I've always found art to be the way to pave the way for technology to be accepted. Most of sci-fi writers, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, and Heinlein, and the others wrote extensively about these. I mean, especially cyberpunk, the cyberpunk genre of science fiction took that to an extreme. Blade Runner is an example of merging first just technologies with humans, and then merging AI with technology with humans until you get to a point where you can distinguish between human and machine, and that's the most extreme aspect of it. And it could either turn people off and scare them, or just excite them for the future. There's this video game that it's right up your alley. It's called Deus Ex Machina. It's a role-playing game where the main character is just a cop in a society where people can just enhance themselves with different technologies, where they can run faster, where they can see, infrared, ultraviolet, and they keep leveling up. And I heard you mentioning that this antenna has evolved since 2004. Like you kept upgrading it as if you were leveling up, assigning points of experience into that technology just so it would become better and better. So if you could take me through how that technology evolved. So it started with vibrations, and I think it would be even better if you could explain how it currently works and how it started, how it all started, and how it was set up at the beginning.
So at the beginning, there's two evolutions. One is the organ, like the as you would say, the hardware, and the other thing is the software or the sense. Mm-hmm. There's two lines of evolution. The antenna has become osseointegrated, so it's inside the skull now. So the vibration of the color enters in my head and then it vibrates in the head, and this allows me to hear the color inside. Whereas in 2003, when I started developing it, it was with headphones, but then headphones were blocking my sense of hearing. That's why I didn't want to use my ears to hear color. So that's why I tried to create a new channel to sense color independently from my other senses. So if I was completely deaf or completely blind, I would still be able to sense color through the antenna. So that's what I wanted to create, was a unique sensory organ for the sense of color. And then the sense has evolved. Yes, at the beginning I was just sensing the visual spectrum from red to violet. And then after some years I didn't see why I should stop there, because there's many more colors that surround us that other species can sense, but that we can't sense. So I decided to include near infrared and near ultraviolet. And then afterwards I also wanted to explore the use of the internet to separate my sense of color from my body. So adding internet connection allowed me to suddenly receive colors from other people. So if someone is in a supermarket in New York, this person can send the colors of the supermarket live while I'm here, and then suddenly I can be sensing colors that are far away from me. Or I can use also this connection to connect to NASA's International Space Station has a live feed from space. So if I connect to this live feed, I can suddenly be sensing the colors from space. So these are the three main steps that I've explored through these.
So these levels of evolution or like growth in the technology do have some implications. You mentioned connection to the internet. That immediately opens up the threat of literally being hacked. So how do you ensure, security and safety? Safety more than security. There's no information to be stolen. Not that you don't have anything in your brain. You do have that information, but it's not connected. This is more of an interface.
It's an input.
So it's an input, exactly.
I only receive from. So it's I'm not sending anything. I'm just receiving.
Yet.
Well, it's not my aim. My aim is to create new senses.
Yeah.
It's different from AI. It's not artificial intelligence, or it's just artificial sense is usually an organ that allows you to receive stimuli from your surroundings, and this allows you to perceive reality in a deeper way in many cases. So yeah, the internet can be a risk. There's a risk that you can be physically hacked. That's why I decided to stop using the internet to connect to my head and use the blockchain. So it's much more difficult to access the blockchain. So in order to send colors to my head now, you need to do it through an NFT.
Okay.
That gives you unlockable content that allows you to connect to my head. So it's much more safer, almost impossible to destroy, and it's permanent as well. It's a permanent connection. It will still be there when I die, because the blockchain cannot be destroyed. So these NFT people will still be able to buy this art and send colors to my head after.
But there's also another layer of threat. I remember as part of my post-grad studies in software engineering, we had this, I focused on computer security, and I remember we had this experiment where the professor showed us a heart pacer that is not connected to, it's not even connected to the internet, but it's connected via Bluetooth to an app on your phone where it could show you, it monitors your heartbeat and performance in general, and different, specs of the machine itself. And through that Bluetooth connection, you could just send certain, and I'm not here to scare you, but you could send certain commands that increase the energy output, and then the heart pacer would explode. It's like right in the heart. And that is a huge risk. And again, not to freak you out, but that's a possibility, or that's a kind of threat that opened up just by you installing a certain technology. Does that keep you at night in any way?
No, but I'm aware that it's an art that has risk. There are some type of arts that are risky and others that are not. This is an art that has several risks. This one, the threat of being hacked in a bad way, the risk that your body might reject the materials that you have implanted, the risk that you might go crazy. I mean, these sensings, maybe psychologically it can affect you. And the fourth maybe is that your brain might reject the stimuli. You might have strong headaches or just rejection. So there's several risks, but there are many cultural events in our planet that have risks. Many sports have risks.
Of course.
Many, like just climbing a mountain is a big risk, and we accept them. And then this is an art that has a risk. Yeah, but we are surrounded by risks. There could be poison here. There could be. I mean, we are always facing risks, and you either live with them and accept them, or you just
find a way to mitigate them. Of course. Yeah. You also mentioned that certain species have more access to the different senses that could sense different events, external events, and I'll get to that. But you mentioned the light spectrum. What we are capable of as human beings is to perceive a subset of the light spectrum, as well as the sound spectrum as well. We're able to hear, within a band of a certain frequency, and then see visible colors, which is the rainbow. But you're right, that is not reality. What you see, what I see right now, are completely different, and we're both experiencing reality in different ways. But it doesn't mean that one of our perceptions is the objective reality of what's happening. Reality is just, a quantum soup, and we just come in with our own limited cone of experience. Bees could look at, flowers and look at the ultraviolet signature and just log whether another bee sat there and consumed that flower. So they just ignore it and go. And what makes you think that you experience reality for how it actually is more than they do? And you mentioned also that you are receiving input from the International Space Station, and that is in itself very novel, but in reality, we also do the same. As non-cyborgs, you could look through a screen at something that is happening in space right now, but we just got used to it. And what you're doing is you're just shocking everyone by saying, I can hear the colors in space live. And now it just opens up a whole other set of questions.
Yeah, because in my case, is the whole sense of colors in space. And that's the whole point, that we could have senses specifically created to explore space. Mm-hmm. And instead of physically going into space, we could create new senses and have them permanently connected to space, so we can become sensastronauts, I call them, and explore space without having to physically go there. I think this is one of the biggest mysteries, is what is out there. Mm. And then I think it's interesting to explore space sensorily, through senses, not through data or information, but by connecting ourselves to sensors that are in space, and then feeling space in a way. And yes, you mentioned many species can sense things that we don't sense, and they are my biggest inspiration. It's not science fiction, but nature, what really inspires me to create this antenna, which is a very normal. There's many species and insects that have antennas. Mm-hmm. Sensing through bone conduction is just like dolphins. Dolphins also don't have ears; they hear through bone.
Sonar.
They hear through the jaw. Ultraviolet and infrared perception, very common for other species.
But you do sense infrared and ultraviolet now, right?
Near infrared and near ultraviolet, because infrared and ultraviolet
it's almost infinite.
There's so many ultraviolets. So I have to name many of these colors because they've never been named before.
Yeah.
There's not just ultraviolets, many ultraviolets. And
shades of ultraviolet.
Yes.
And you mentioned that I had the pleasure of attending your talk and performance last night at the Biennale, and I really, it caught my attention how you called it revealed reality. It's not augmented reality. You're not adding a layer of perception to whatever you have, and it's not virtual reality where you just suppress a certain sense or input machine, which is the eye or the ear or anything else. This is revealed reality. It's out there and it's just being revealed to you through technology. What other kinds of technologies do you think are currently accessible to everyone that could take their senses to another level? You mentioned the Bluetooth and other technologies. Can you just walk me through that? What are the limits of this field right now, and where do you see it going?
Just by using the technology that we are already giving to machines, we could gain many senses, like sensing what's behind us, for example, through earrings or through infrared sensors that vibrate. They could give you a sense of what's behind you. Compasses that allow you to feel the magnetic north, so that would give you a sense of direction.
Mentioned something about time, and that just blew me away.
Yes.
Can you break that down?
Well, I've always been interested in time perception, but we don't have an organ specifically for time perception. So I created this it's like a crown, it's a point of heat that takes 24 hours to go around the body. So it gives you a sense of the passage of time. So you can feel the 24-hour cycle around your body.
So what does that mean? If I feel the sensation here, it means it's a certain time?
Well, it means that if you feel it here, the sun is shining in London. The nose is London. So this is London, this is Iceland, this is America. Then you can feel where the sun is shining at 12 o'clock solar time. So this gives you a sense of rotation of the planet. And then when your brain gets used to this, the experiment is to see if you can change your perception of time by changing the speed in which this point of heat goes around the body. So if you change the speed,
oh, that's messed up.
you would probably create time illusion, basically.
Yeah.
So the aim is to explore if we can create time illusions.
I see. Can you tell me just how, like, your current state of being right now? So this antenna, does it have some sort of sensor that is just picking up on frequencies 360 in front of you? Is that what's happening? Or is it just directional?
No, 360, just here. It's the dominant color. It's fiber optic, basically, very simple. Fiber optic that picks up the dominant color. And then the closer I get, the more specific it gets. It sends the dominant color to the chip that detects the frequency and simply transposes it to its correspondent vibration. And then this piezo that vibrates becomes a sound, because when you have a vibration on wood or on bone, it becomes a sound, like a tuning fork. So that's the system. And then the advantage is that it can go a bit beyond the visual spectrum.
And does it, how long did it take you to get used to that? Because I realized that at first it was blocking your senses, but when it became another, layer of perception, it's like seeing and hearing something. They don't interact. I could look at you and listen to something else, and then just still, log what's happening in front of me while thinking about what I'm listening to. It's just different senses. The way I look at it, the brain could be a computer, and these are just interfaces. It's just like connecting a camera to your computer, or just speaker phones or whatever. How long did it take you to just, accept this ambience? Because what I assume is there is this constant frequency and sounds whenever you move your head. Or is it the case? If you just nod or move your head, does the frequency change?
Yes, because the dominant color keeps changing. So if I move the head, the dominant color will change. But I think 5 months in total for the brain to completely get used to it, to completely find it normal like any other sense. But each person would find its own time of adaptation. Adding a new sense depends on many factors. So I think each brain would adapt differently to, also depends on which sense you add. And some people might not adapt, and they might have to find different ways of adding a new sense if they want to explore this.
But the way our brains work is we learn something, we go to sleep, our brains run simulations of potential, scenarios in the future, just so we train and know how to survive and adapt to them. What you did was you just opened up a new sense to yourself as a human being, and then your brain would probably spend a few months to grapple with it, try to understand what's happening, and then I'm assuming you started dreaming in these sounds. And these sounds and vibrations correspond to whatever your brain is simulating as colors. How is that experience? I can't even imagine that, but can you try to explain it?
I remember waking up, first time that I dreamt hearing colors in my dreams, and that was a very important moment. I thought that was the moment when I started feeling that my brain and the software were uniting.
Merging, in a sense.
And that's when I started to feel that the technology was me, not something else, but that I was becoming the technology. And that's, when I started dreaming in color was the moment I started defining myself as a cyborg, which is, cyborg is just a word that has been used to define this union between technology and bodies that also affects the mind. Because there's also bionic, which is more focused on body and technology, but cyborg is more body, technology, and mind. So that's the difference between bionic people and cyborg people.
Okay, and you're constantly improving this technology or evolving it. What are the next levels of evolution that you've envisioned, or where would you like to take this? What's the next level of evolution for this technology in your head?
Well, maybe charging it through induction, like having a small turbine in the blood vessel that can continuously charge the antenna, allowing it to move through thought. If I think left, it could move left, but now I would need to use something quite big, so it's too big now. But maybe in the future it might be able to move independently. But no, my focus is on exploring other senses. Like, as I said, the sense of time is a sense that I'm very interested in exploring. And maybe when I'm older, the sense of balance, I don't want to fall. So maybe having a tail would help, having a better sense of balance.
That's true.
And maybe also finding out if we can create an organ for the sense of humor as well. That would be interesting if we could create an organ for the sense of humor.
That's where AI comes in. I think sense of humor and comedy are just complex layers of thought. And when you mentioned, so my background is also in comedy. I'm a stand-up comic, so I spend a lot of time conceptualizing about comedy and thinking about what makes things funny, how people find things funny. And if you could crack that, please give me a call. I need to know how people think about things. But the thing about comedy is it's typically subversion of expectations. So I would present something to you while hiding other information and then just shock you with it. And I wonder if there's a way to simulate that.
Maybe how to find things funny without it's complex, basically, because I think it's the modification of reality, that when reality is deformed, most people find it funny if it's deformed in a way, either through speech or through something visual, something deforms, and then in general, someone's walking like this and suddenly this breaks because it's complex, but I think there might be a way of finding things that surround you more funny and relaxing. If we all had the way of really having a sense of humor, we found things happy, maybe there would be less wars or less, or if you are sick and you're dying, you can have a way of finding the situation funny. I mean, so this is one of the maybe impossible challenges of creating an organ for the sense of humor. Is one of these life projects is always in my mind.
Yeah, it might be difficult to see the leap between having sense of humor and stopping wars. I could see how big of a leap that is, but you mentioned something about we could just save the planet by, instead of changing the environment, we change how we react to things. If you could control your body temperature, you don't need ACs. You can just stand in the middle of the desert and just feel okay by regulating your energy. I'm sure there's like this is a whole branch of research and art projects. Where has that field gone when it comes to doing things similar to changing your body temperature or changing how you perceive the environment instead of changing the environment itself?
Yeah, well, I see it as art projects, but if we talk about that's more of a social movement, then it would be finding ways of, for example, having night vision so that we don't have to use light at night. That would be good for the planet because we wouldn't spend so much energy creating light. And as you said, temperature regulation would avoid heaters and air conditionings. But these are challenging because they are, they're both of them are quite challenging. And any of these senses, if we manage to create them, you would need a lot of people with them in order to really change the situation, which is that we are changing our surroundings instead of changing ourselves in order to live better. And that's something that I think in the future it might slowly change because it is a solution to this climate change emergency. So if, instead of adapting the planet to ourselves, we should adapt ourselves to the planet.
Yeah. Take me to how each different color has its own frequency and how you have not memorized them but got used to them, and then how you started making music out of that.
Yeah, so I learned colors through the sound of them, and it took a while to learn the names that you give to the frequencies. Red is a low frequency, so it's around F sharp, the note. Orange is a bit higher. Blue is C sharp, and then these. So it's like a musical scale.
And do they correspond one to one, or is it something around a certain?
It's very microtonal. So red, for example, I have 30 reds, and I have 30 different microtones of red, 30 different microtones of orange. And it's the physical transposition. So red, the color red is 420 millions of waves per second. That's the vibration of the light. If you could hear this vibration, which is impossible to hear because it would be too high, it would be a note between F and F sharp, and that's the note that I hear. And the same with each color. And then once you hear color, then you can suddenly create music from people's faces or from objects, from food, from music is everywhere. So instead of playing music, you can just look at music and compose music by composing objects in front of you. So that has changed. I can now compose music by looking at things instead of playing an instrument. And also the other way around, I can paint what I hear, because color is sound, sound is also color. So if I hear music, I can paint the music, or I can paint someone's voice. So yeah, it has opened up possibilities of expressing myself through this new sense.
I see. And what sound is my face making right now?
Faces are usually F sharp.
Okay.
So it's we all
it's orange,
sound,
right?
Yeah, we all sound more or less the same. Even if you are very, very dark, it's still dark orange. And if you're very, very light, it's still light orange. There are types of oranges that are red, going to red, or oranges that go to yellow, but it's still shades of orange. And we all sound more or less the same. And skin, what changes is the eyes, because it can be blue, or the hair as well can be very different. And lips are always also F, red.
Okay, and so what you see is the most dominant color in my face, right? That's what you're seeing right now, and it's creating a certain type of vibration that you log as a certain color, or on the spectrum of the band of visible light. But what you hear at any instance is a specific note, right? How does that? It's just a note. It's not a song. How do you compose a song from what you're seeing then?
By combining different colors, you can create musical chords. So blue, pink, and yellow would create C major, for example. So if you have these three colors, you can create C major, and then different colors allow you to create different melodies.
So it's just like one press on the piano. It's just like that.
Well, piano only has 12
Yes, of course.
notes in an octave, and this has 360 notes in an octave. So it's more like a violin or a theremin.
It's like a
it needs to be
theremin.
slide. You have to be able to slide the notes because piano is divided already. But
It's fixed.
so yeah, it's more microtonal.
I see.
And I hear it through like sine waves, which is more electronic.
I see. Like I've had so many questions to get. This is stumping me because I understand where you're coming from, but I can't feel how you're feeling right now. And I guess that difference is what creates conversation. And you've kind of used that to, turn it back at people and make them think of who they are. And these, differences in perception really makes us question certain things. For example, we use red for, traffic lights, brakes, colors, because red has the longest wavelength and it travels the farthest. That's why when the sun is setting, the sky is red, because all other colors are just, scattered through whatever noise in the atmosphere. And so you could see red color from way far. And as humans, we associated that with danger, with attention. It grabs your attention. But wavelength, the relationship between wavelength and frequency is inversed. So the higher the wavelength is, the lower the frequency is. And the higher the frequency is, the shorter the wavelength is. Which kind of means that red is the most alarming color to people who perceive it with their eyes, but in your case, it's the lowest frequency, which means
It's very calm.
it's very calm.
It's very profound and calm. So yes, to me, red is more of a peaceful color because it's very innocent. It can't really harm you. Whereas violet is a color that is much more aggressive. It's higher frequency, so if you go a bit beyond violet, it can even go through your skin and it can damage your skin. So violet is the closest to danger physically. And then green is in the middle, very neutral.
I see.
So yeah, I guess if we all heard colors, we would sense colors physically, maybe we would relate them culturally in a different way. But yeah, as you said, it's hard to express what one feels through a new sense. And that's the challenge of Saiborg art, because it's an art movement that doesn't separate the artist from the artwork or the place where the artwork is happening or the audience. In Saiborg art, all these elements are in one. So I'm the artist, I'm the work of art, I'm the space where the art is happening, and I'm the only one in the audience, basically. I'm the only one experiencing the artwork. So it's challenging to share Saiborg art, because the only way to experience Saiborg art is to become a Saiborg artist, because then you can explore having new senses.
That's your way of recruiting everyone else, right?
Well, it's a way of, I guess it's, but even between Saiborg artists, we can't really experience the other person's art either.
Yeah.
And also, if you had this antenna implanted, you would probably experience things differently as well. So, because it's a combination of brain and technology. So, I think it's an art movement that is a bit different from other 20th century art movements. It's a bit different, yes. But it's still an art movement, because our aim is an artistic aim. Our aim is just to explore and experience and express ourselves through new senses.
I see. But you also, so it makes it difficult for us to understand each other, where we're coming from, how we're experiencing things. But this kind of art and technology could also open up a new mode of communication between different people. Sharing vibrations, like the Bluetooth tooth that you mentioned. Can you get into that and how it works and and the implications of using that technology and applications of that technology as well.
Yeah, I have many teeth missing, so I've used this space to create other projects. One of them is a tooth that was placed in my mouth, and another tooth was placed in Moon's mouth, a friend of mine. And then whenever she clicked, I would receive a vibration in my mouth, and whenever I clicked, she received a vibration in her mouth. And we both learned the Morse code, so we could communicate and send words to each other through this system. We call it the transdental communication system, and it's a tooth that works through Bluetooth. So it's a Bluetooth tooth that allows you to communicate from mouth to mouth. And then this was a performance we did in Brazil. The audience was giving me words, just any words, and then I would send the word to Moon, and Moon would be somewhere else, and then she had an audience there, and then she would say what word she received, and then she did the same to me, and then we performed this first transdental communication system as an art performance.
Yeah.
But it could be used also for communication in space, because in space there's no air conduction, so it could work, or on the water, or it could be used if you are completely paralyzed, but you can still move your mouth. You could use this system, this tooth, to speak via Morse code to anyone else. So we are aware that all these art projects that involve technology can be used in other ways, but we really just focus on the art, and doctors or other people can use this technology if they want in other means.
Yeah, and I love how you had this application for it. You were talking about this last night, and when you were talking about the Bluetooth tooth that can can communicate over. But first, it communicates within a certain proximity, right?
No, because it got Bluetooth from the tooth to the phone, and then from the phone to wherever the other person is. Yeah.
Okay, so this could actually be used to communicate across the planet, or even in space, right? It's like
Yes.
wherever you are, if you're connected to the internet, you can. If your phone is connected to the internet.
The problem is that if you speak through in the space with the phone, you won't hear it.
Yeah.
Whereas you can use your phone in space, but connect to your tooth. So that's you could still use your mobile phone in space then, but for a different reason.
For different reasons. And when you were talking, the first thing that came to mind when you're talking about someone who's paralyzed and they use this for communication, I remember reading The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, and there was this guy who was just completely paralyzed, and he had to say something, and then somehow his granddaughter started communicating with him through Morse code with blinks, and he would and they had their own system. They wouldn't spell it letter by letter. It would be the first letter, and then she would go through the dictionary, and it's just a faster way of communication. And it just blows my mind that it wasn't Morse code as much as it's rotations of next letter with different types of blinks, which is pretty much.
Well, Mona and I with the Morse code, we did actually say if it was U, M, B, R, she didn't need to continue. I knew it was umbrella. So it happened the same with other words, that I didn't need to wait for the whole word to end. So I guess if we had practiced it for more, then we would have find a way, because Morse code is really slow.
It is.
But you can find ways of using it faster.
Being fluent in it.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind that Alexander Dumas had that way of communication in the 1800s. And then now with technology, we could take that, have vibrations, go through Bluetooth from your actual tooth to your phone, and then your phone sends that signal somewhere else. It just shows you the limits, like actually the limitlessness of technology and what it could bring to us.
Because I could be talking to you and talking to someone else at the same time now. I could be talking to Moon and to you.
Have you? I mean, please don't.
No.
Have you seen the film Her?
Yes.
That is just an extreme case of that technology, or like that kind of communication, because you've got the AI who's just talking to this guy and he's falling in love with her, and it's just a whole thing. And then she's like, "Listen, I am in love with I'm at this moment in the silences between our, communication, these brief moments of silence. I use this time is an eternity for me as an AI, given how fast she's processing, or that AI is processing information. So she's like, I'm talking to 7,342 people while talking to you, and I'm also in love with like 600 of them. We cannot understand that. And that is an extreme form of the gap in perception between you and me right now. So that's why I find art as a medium for, again, posing questions, taking things to a conceptual level that makes us grapple with them. Where do you see yourself taking this? Is this your life project? Or is it a side thing that you're doing? Or where do you see, has it become part of who you are, or is it who you are? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I make no difference between art and life. I mean, I can't separate it. So I see it as my life, and then I just think that maybe in the future there'll be more projects, and I'll see them as art projects, and maybe there'll be more people exploring new senses, and it will be interesting to see how we can reveal elements that surround us that we've never been able to sense, and how we can express ourselves through these new senses artistically. So if we've always expressed ourselves through the same senses artistically, if we add new senses, this opens up art in a completely different level. We can express ourselves through senses that have never been used before.
Or even envisioned.
Yeah, so that's, I think, what I'm interested in seeing if this happens.
Yeah. I know you have a flight to catch, but I've got one last question, and then I have one last request. The question is, this is not just you. This is a movement of artists, of a society that is, exploring this area. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, Moon Rivas, she's been exploring this for many years. She had these earrings that allowed her to sense movement first, so she would feel like first here, then here. She would become a movement detector, and then she would tell the speed in which people were moving at the beginning. So depending on the interval, she could slowly learn the speed of moving objects. Also, by turning around the earrings, she could sense what was behind her. So this gave her retroception. And then she had implants in her feet to sense the seismic activity of the world. So whenever she would feel a vibration in her feet, it meant there was an earthquake somewhere in the planet. So then this gave her like a second heartbeat for her. She would feel her heart and also feel the heartbeat of the earth.
Wait, so she's constantly feeling her heartbeat? That must be annoying.
She was feeling the heartbeat of the earth, basically. The earthquakes are like heartbeats because there's many. So she was feeling the vibrations of the earth, and she made the relationship between heart and. But then she removed them, and now she's exploring other senses. Then there's also Paul Lombarte. He's using his heart for art. He's sending his heartbeats to the internet, and then he has sold his heartbeats as an NFT, and then also he uses his heartbeats to create external sculptures, like a clock that moves according to his heartbeat, a light that goes on and off according to his heartbeat. So he's using electrodes to send his heartbeats to the internet, and then he creates artworks with this.
That's very cool.
And then Manel de Aguas, he has 2 implants here to sense the weather. It's like 2 weather stations, and it allows him to feel the temperature, the humidity, and the pressure around him, and he also uses this to create music of the weather. So the weather that he feels, he transposes it to music. There's Skylandra. He has a sensor that allows him to feel cosmic rays, and he also makes music from the cosmic rays that he feels. Dodo, she's from the Czech Republic, and she's sensing radiation. And then she's very young though, so she's still developing it further, and she wants to express herself through this sense of radiation. It's very experimental. Many of us, first we start with an exosense, we wear it or have it attached, as I did at the beginning, attached, and then if your brain gets used to it, then after some time, we try to find ways of having it more adapted to our bodies, because it's body art in a way. So
I see. I wish you all the best. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. It's interesting. It's pushing the boundaries, it's making people think. And I appreciate you coming here. And if I could, trouble you with asking you to make a song that is me, I'd appreciate it. I know you're busy, but if you could have the time to make that, send it to me, and then we'll just play it along with this discussion, it would be phenomenal. Thank you so much for coming.
You.
I really appreciate your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thanks.
حبيبي يعطيكم العافيه شباب بجد.